Okay, I'll call the meeting to order at 7:35. Or 6:35, sorry. Let's start with the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the January 16 meeting? Okay, thank you. Second, John. Can any adjustments to the minutes? Very good with those. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? No. Passed unanimously. Thank you. In terms of old business, I've incorporated, as you saw in the interim report, the costs for the capital costs. Thank you, Peter, for sending that. So I went through all those and just updated for all the properties based on the CIP program for capital. So that's, I think, in pretty good shape at this stage. And I'm not sure we have any major. I mean, I'm happy to share it with people if we think we need it, but I think we're fine on that. It was in the report. I'm going to change it up a little bit because I'd like to start with the interim report. So instead of going to the strategic thing now, I'd like, can you bring up the PowerPoint?
Sure.
And I'd like to share that. So Anthony Lagana is our intern that's been working under Peter's tutelage, and which I appreciate a lot, him taking charge of him. And so he's done a first pass at those 13 properties that we identified in terms of where there's wetlands, where there's deed restrictions, things of those type of natures. This is extremely preliminary. Obviously, although he's a talented young man, he's certainly not an expert on all the wetlands issues and stuff like that. So we'll have to get into all those kinds of things, but it's giving us a foundation for what we need to evaluate, I think. So if you can bring that up on the screen and we'll kind of walk through this quickly. So you put some disclaimers on things. Basically, there's some unknown regulations. Obviously missing information. You go to the second slide, please.
Sure.
So obviously we need to go through the data, and as I was mentioning, with a lot more things. But I mean, at least it's giving us a foundation. So if you can go to the next slide, it's Nathan's Bush Garage. He laid out the elevation, the boundaries, aquifer, if there was any wetlands and public water supply, watershed are all listed there. So obviously there's wetlands on this property. And then you go down to the next slide, and he gives us a summary. So it's zoned for light industrial, and it has the kind of uses that can be there. So there are wetlands on the property, and there's deed restrictions. There's a 20-foot right of way to the railroad, and there's a 25-foot wide right of way for road access. Pretty standard stuff, non-intrusive. So there's no significant restrictions. So basically, we're talking 2/3 of that property could be where there's things that could be done with it, if you will. I think at that stage, so that kind of gives us a, and I think it's nice because he's kind of given us a profile for each of the properties in this way. So the next slide, the next one is the surf club. Basically, the surf club is not much of an issue because we're really not talking about changing the surf club. If you go to the next slide, we're really talking about releasing or the space at the surf club that's now geared towards the maintenance, grounds maintenance folks that can be released towards programmatic issues.
Peter, can you back up to the map? Are there two parcels that make up the surf club?
Yes.
Okay, because it looks like it's kind of to the football field.
Yeah, there's
Gotcha.
another parcel to the east of that part,
Okay.
you know, that makes up a
Yep.
much larger part. The part we're looking at is really that middle
Yep.
part,
Yep.
just north of the basketball courts and part in the parking lots. Yeah, so it's kind of in that. It's considered wetlands, I guess it is.
The wetlands that goes right, yeah, there's actually a creek that cuts right across there, right across the golf course and everything.
Yeah, but the area we're talking about is below the
It's
wetlands.
down below that, yes.
So, again, it's just laid out the zoning and the restrictions. So I think that's pretty straightforward, so you can jump ahead. Yeah. So this is Durham Road here, the train station. That's that property. That's just north of, it's bounded by 79 and the railroad tracks. And it's north of the train station, as you can see on the picture. So if you go to the next slide, it's zoned residential, which is kind of interesting. Exceptions for municipal buildings, transit stations, other things. But it is around a lot. I mean, there's commercial properties all around it. It is interesting that although it's wetlands, it's called wetland, you know, in terms of the GIS. But when you actually click on it, it calls it a tree
Right.
wetland.
Yeah.
It's not a
Yeah.
it's not a traditional wetland. So I think we need to have a more greater understanding. I went by the site the other day and there's a lot of deciduous trees there, which are not normal in a wetlands area. Normally you see more brush and those kind of things. So, you know, when you see oak trees and, you know, other kind of deciduous trees there, it's kind of unusual. So I do think that we need to look at that. There is some deed restrictions, but again, I think it's really important for us to find out what the state is thinking of that, of how they're going to use that property. Because ultimately, I think if they can use that, if the state says they can use that property, then that opens up how there may be opportunities to other kinds of development on there, because it would make an awful lot of sense when you're talking about the whole downtown development area, if you could free up that space on either side of the train station for some sort of development. But also, I think we need to, as we mentioned in the report, we need to somehow tie the development of that part of the train station to the release of the old train station at the corner of Bradley Road and Wall Street. So that's still owned by the state. I think it's owned by Amtrak, actually. And just for 2 seconds of history on that, I was the chair of the EDC when we moved the train station from that location to its current location and built a new train station and the parking lot and all that kind of stuff. We argued at that time that Amtrak, because the town built that, should be giving us that property. Amtrak said they wanted to keep it for overflow parking. All right.
What were they anticipating?
Yeah. So obviously, I don't think one car over the last 15, 25 years, because this was in the early mid 90s when we did this, in the past 20 years has ever been parked there. It's overflow. Plus, when we built the parking lot, where the light stanchions are, we put deep footings in order to build a parking garage there, a second deck if ever needed. So all those footings and everything is already there to put a second deck in there. So it seems to me that this is kind of really important for us to understand what's really happening on the property north of the train station and how that can be used for leverage to release the property on Bradley and Wall Street, because I think that's a very desirable developable area for the town. So I'm not sure. I think we probably have to hire somebody to actually go and look at that.
That's the part, that whole strip that's all along, right just north of Bradley.
No, this particular parcel, you can hire somebody there.
Oh, yeah, for that part, yeah.
What's happening there, because it's confusing if it's in, even though it's, God bless you, even though it's listed as wetlands, it's defined differently in
It's a
the
different designation.
tree designation on the GIS is different as well. So I think it takes, my experience has been from developing a few other properties. Sometimes when it says wetlands, it really is not wetlands, and sometimes it is. And so you have to kind of look at it.
I mean, am I understanding this correctly, that we also might have an issue of redundancy? If you have the footers in the light for a double decker or whatever garage, why would then there be a need to have
Correct.
overflow?
Oh, no, it's
So it's not-
absolutely. And plus that parking lot.
And you already have the investment.
Yeah, and the parking lot is probably never more than 15 or 20%.
No, yeah, it's a max.
So
That's on a busy
I would
day.
think on a busy day, yeah. So I mean, we could maybe do a parking study or something like that there to kind of open that up. But it seems that we certainly have an opportunity to do some more interesting things. Okay, well, let's move on to the next property. The Cops Road, this is the area east of Cops Road, part of Borough Farm. If you go back, it's zoned rural, single family, rural density, zoned rural 2. There are some wetlands on the property, but it is interesting.
This is east of the road, correct?
Yeah, this boundary line right here. This is Cops Road right here. And the Bauer Farm, I want to say, is right there.
So, and there are some wetlands on there, but there is a lot of property that's not wetlands. Again, it needs to be reviewed. It is interesting, according to the Historical Society, and on the Historical Society's website, the deed from the Bowers that gave the farm to the town said housing was affordable housing was one of the options that they recommended for their property, as well as community uses and things of that nature. So I do think there are some options for us to be considering that, especially if we think about that as affordable housing. So the deed restrictions, exclusive uses, as he pointed out, he did go through the deeds: parks, recreation, affordable housing, agricultural, social services, or municipal buildings. So there's, it certainly appears to be a space that, I mean, it's 22 plus acres of space, and even if half of it is usable, that's would be an opportunity, I would think. So again, taking the same person, whoever would look at the Cops Road and look at here, so we can really lay out what's going on there would be important. Jansen's property this is the Green Hill Road is the next, this is right behind Peter's office by the high school. So again, it's one of these areas that's just really not used at all. And trying to find the appropriate use for it, I think, is something that we should be considering, given its clear logistical um, benefit to all the three schools that are right there. So it is zoned rural residential, rural 2. So obviously there are things and there are no clear restrictions on it. There's a fair amount of wetlands, or so it's defined, but again, it's the question of if you can move certain types of functions there might be an option. And especially since it's already tied to the maintenance facility for the town, for the schools. I mean, that's an interesting idea of what might be the best connection. The next property is the Ridge Road, and this is the, as you can see, this is 50 plus, or it's 80 plus acres overall. The east will boundary all the way back to the Kleins. I think one of the questions in my mind at least is talking with the folks at Kleins to see what their long-term thoughts are. They've been trying to sell that for some time now.
I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he approached the country club 4 years ago just to sell it. And so it's been actively being marketed, if you will. But you know, it would be an interesting thing if that ultimately starts going into residential development, tying this into how, given that the other 2 houses just south of Kleins have just been added.
That's the driving range there?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, obviously the development's already moving to and bounding on the both the south and north side of his property. And so here, this is on the east of his property in a big way. Obviously, these are the west of his property, which would be helpful. There are certain parcels where there are some wetlands, but on the other hand, there are a lot of places where there is not. So, you know, at a minimum, you probably have 20 to 30 building lots in this space, I would suspect. So, and you know, it's an interesting question of looking at how that might actually be converted to building lots and what each lot might be worth in terms of selling. I mean, I would think that if we look at this, one of the things I'd like to do is spend time with, one of the ideas was how do we engage with someone in the town who has development experience to say what would be the most desirable way for the town to package it. You know, so that it would come out and I'm not sure I'd want to go to actual developers that may want to do this, but I'm thinking of someone like a gentleman who I know of who's retired. Billy basically built all of Randy Drive and did a lot of development in this town and still actively engaged. He lives down the street from me. And, you know, somebody like that who we could bring in and who doesn't have a dog in the hunt, so to speak, and could advise how, if you actually set it up, you set it up with pre-approvals, set it up with lot boundaries, you'd set it up as a whole thing so that it could be actually put on the market with some certainty. Because I think that would be the biggest thing for a developer, given, because I know getting things approved in this town when it's going from zero is not so easy. So if you have a series of properties that are already pre-approved in terms of dynamics and general types of size of square footage of construction and placement, lot size and things of that nature, that can be already all set up through planning and zoning and town planning office. That could actually expedite this in a big way and would add value. I mean, you know, something that's $100,000 or $150,000 an acre would be worth probably $2.25 because of the certainty of what you're going to get. So that's I think it interesting here and as a byproduct, something that we'd have to look at. The next one is the area by, this is over by Summerhill. This is,
Ryerson and Brown.
this is adjacent to Ryerson and Brown. Again, same application that we talked about Ridge Road, and how you do it. There are a little bit of wetlands, but again, no significant deed restrictions. Access is the biggest issue here. But maybe the access is done through the Ryerson property. That creates, you could create an access off of 79 and through Ryerson right into their property, those areas, and you could create a community in there, which would be pretty interesting. So that's very positive. And then the last one was the Rockland, which is, if you go up. And again, the biggest thing on the next thing on Rockland is.
This is, oh, I'm sorry, these are the two areas of open space, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And you want to go to Rockland?
Yeah.
There we go.
So that's, it's a massive amount of acreage. It would be interesting to really understand the contours and what's really developable there. Because when you look at it, you know, watershed and there are other issues. I don't know how all that stuff actually applies, honestly. So there's I mean, clearly years ago with this, before the town had this, it was acquired with the hope of being developed. Developer bought it, was trying to actually build things out there and get it approved, and was running into troubles getting it approved, and as a result, just kind of let it go to the town. Next, back taxes, I think, more than anything else, but any event, it's, and again, it's another, and like we said, you know, it's not a question of what we do with all 650 acres. I mean, our question is, can we get 75 or 150 acres out of those 650? That might be something that could be done with and not disturb the vast majority of the area.
Is there any chance of finding out why exactly he did not get approved? Like, what were the concerns, what were the issues? What were the stumbling blocks?
Yeah, we can look into that. There's
Just to
there's some-
see, get a feel,
there's
so
some
that if we
background
do
on
present
that.
something. we-
That's a long story for another day.
Oh, okay,
It is.
never mind.
It was a long time ago, too.
Yeah, I mean, this was back in the 80s. Yeah,
Yeah.
early
Oh,
80s.
Talking about
So
putting a
we're
golf
talking
course.
40 years ago.
They want to put a golf course there at one.
Yeah, well, EDC, we looked at potentially putting a golf course there in the 90s once the town got it, but, you know, there were a lot of things going on where, you know, it was a combination of town
Yes.
restrictions, but more importantly, developer ran out of money and things to be able to do it. And, yeah, so anyway, so I will forward out this whole, the last one he has is the Fort Path, which is the town garage, the DPW site. That is interesting. He goes, you know, there are no wetlands and that's showing any major right-of-ways or restrictions, because I was concerned there might have been some sort of a restriction or right-of-way from the train,
Yeah, it's on the other side.
but it's all on the other side. So, you know, this is really wide open, that whole area, or any kind of look on our part. So, so thank you, Peter. Please tell
You did a
Anthony,
great job,
thank you
yeah.
very much for his efforts. We'll distribute this and I'll kind of make a hit list of things that follow up as a result of this.
I also sent you the maps, which he had sent a map of the whole of Madison, which showed all properties zoned, whether they were owned by us or business or whatever. And then he pulled all that out and he showed so you'd have a really great visual of the map of all the properties owned by the town of
I
Madison.
missed that. I'm sorry. I must have,
You want
I'm
to see
sure
it?
I have it.
I can prop it up here. You want to see
Yeah,
it?
go ahead. Bring that up a second. I'm just going to excuse myself for one second.
Just stop the share. And
That would be a great thing to have.
Yeah, for sure.
I know.
You know, we're getting to the point where we need to start seriously thinking about pulling in the outside resources we need for some of these various locations and things. We know it needs to happen. In terms of what moving forward in tasks of various sorts, I think that's starting to get a big deal. Not necessarily easy to find the right sources.
This is what I wanted.
Sorry.
So here's the map. Share this. I can certainly send this to everybody here tonight, but this is what's in pink. These are all the town-owned parcels. So I printed this up and put it in my office, and it is kind of nice to see. It's just a quick visual. We own all these pieces of property on Madison.
And that was one of the things that I was trying to put into I put this with the dots from the
Yeah.
GIS.
So he outlined
This is a
all every
better-
single
this is
boundary
maybe a better
line.
graphic.
Yeah.
Sure puts Rockland in perspective.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, it's Rockland and where the the school complex. I mean, those are the two. You know, everybody always thinks the Surf Club is one of the largest parcels. The reality is, you look at the school complex in the Rockland, it's really something else.
But
It would be interesting to know how many total acres is the town. I don't know, and what percentage of the town is owned by the town.
you can see these little areas are here. These are the open space and for development areas. Those are really, we own them, but you can't do anything with them.
Right.
But these are the larger ones here, this, of course, up here. And it really kind of, it's telling, that's for sure.
Cool.
I'll send that over to the whole committee.
Thank
That'd be
you.
great.
Thank you. Okay, and I'll forward out this, he has it as a PDF. So, I'll send that to everybody. Yeah, as well. Okay. Any questions or other comments on that?
No, this is
Okay,
great.
progress. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to Charmaine and Nick to talk about any further follow-up on the strategic value, or if you want to defer those till after we have the conversation.
Well, they both pretty much coincide. I
Want to try to do it together?
I think so, because they're really, they're, I think you've done a good job, even not us having shared a lot of what we've done so far. A lot of the things that we've looked at and discussed and rated, it pretty much is on par with some of the areas you addressed in your report.
And, you know, I was in conversation with Charmaine earlier today, one of the things that I'm hoping for is the reason for that piece. I mean, we got several pieces that we're trying to put together and integrate in order to create a store. So part of it is the operating capital costs of all these buildings, where you have a significant capital investment in the future expectation. Second is all these properties and whether they're being used or not being used, relative usage. And then there's you know, and then obviously you have the third being the strategic value of the properties, which is some of which is adjacency, some of which is town function, some of which is not a lot of usage or not a lot of value. And so that's the, you know, by integrating all those pieces, I think we come up with our goal is not to say we want to touch all 82 parcels of land that we have in the town, but we really want to say what are the top 5 or 6 that we really see as major opportunities. And, you know, and so it kind of just paints a picture of how we highlight that.
And as we have discussed too, I think another component that at some point we'll need to address when we want to put a truly comprehensive picture is what are the needs?
Right.
Because you can have the locations, see the opportunities, but then how do you identify the needs in the whole scene of things, identify all the vacancies or the properties that are flexible to be reutilized in a different way. How can they meet those needs?
All right.
And so that's some of the things that we discussed too when we go through these reports.
So can you bring up Peggy's edits to the report?
Yes.
I think that's probably the best way to start, because it has the core report plus her judgments.
We can load it up here.
Yeah, if you could bring it up there, we can kind of go through that together. So before we started, I asked Seth for some greater commentary. So he forwarded to me early this afternoon a couple comments, which I think is helpful. He wrote to me that he's in general agreement with Peggy's recommendations, but however, he thinks that taking a stand on the town campus learning center at this stage is not a great idea. We're not taking a stand on any of the buildings. So, you know, because she had put in her comments that it should be sold or leased to a potential daycare or something like that. And his commentary specifically was that the old portable classrooms are well past their life expectancy and would not suitably host any future programming once the TCLC program is moved to the new pre-K in the fall. So, you know, basically he's saying that this was from the Board of Ed. They were saying they were not.
They're in rough shape.
They're in really rough shape. So basically he's saying we need to come to a conclusion on whether they should be kept, repaired, or raised before we get to the point of,
As a separate issue.
and before we get to the point of saying whether they should be leased or sold or something like that. So that was his comment. He also said, and I think he also shared with me, actually, I think he shared that with everybody. He also shared to me that he likes the way we treated the academy as one facet of the overall picture rather than a focal point. that was important. And that he felt that the purpose of the committee is to provide strategy and ideas, not to manage projects once they are in flight. So, and if we help find a surrogate for any other functions versus another program, that's definitely within our mission because of the strategic planning town needs, is what our goal is. So, so basically he felt that, that as long as we offer strategic assistance in the event any project does not go through, or is adjusted in some sort of way, that assistance in finding alternatives is good, is the right thing for us to be doing. So that was that. Those were his comments, in general. So if we can kind of go through the report little by little, I know all of you had a chance to read it. You can blow that up a little bit and go through this. I, in general, found the Peggy's suggestions pretty acceptable. I did not have any significant issue with them, honestly. So let's just kind of go through the introduction. I mean, the meet community expectations. I mean, I think that's a fine addition. The committee to prioritize short-term planning for the 3 schools. Well, instead of, I said, she took away, although there was pressure, and she modified it, although it was intended that the committee prioritize the short-term planning. We fell back and determined it would be more prudent to initially take a step back and look at it in a broader sense. So I think that's a fair way of saying what we're trying to do here. If anybody disagrees with that, please let me just jump in. So just grammatical errors, grammatical edits. On the next page, under preliminary findings, she added a fair amount. I put on here the town hall. She added a bullet number 4, and that graphic is interesting. I'm not sure. This graphic is a little bit more compelling from where all the sites are, only because it shows the volume of sites rather than. And I think maybe we do both. Because that other graphic that shows the amount of area doesn't give you as it's not as impactful in terms of the volume of things, but this kind of helps you. But basically, I did the numbers. So it's 680,000 square feet of building space. I believe is what basically that's based on the numbers you provided us, Peter. At the very beginning when we first started. Of this, the town provides over 600,000 square feet. I was trying to get to what she was talking to. I think she was trying to define how much of it's actually for government use versus how much of it's non-government use. So 570,000 square feet is schools, 30,000 square feet is for other kinds of functions like the senior center or surf club, those kinds of things. And then 80,000 square feet is approximately for school, town buildings.
That seems fair.
It's basically the town campus, the DPW garage, the Memorial Town Hall, those kinds of things. So, I mean, I think that's what she's getting at there. So I need to kind of go through those numbers better to make sure we have it correct. But I think that order of magnitude is probably of the case. So basically, she's trying to go to permanent facilities for community organizations, not part of town government. So I'm wondering if she wants to segregate schools separately from that. I mean, it seems to me that you want to say it may be more effective because I think this is a good point to basically say as a foundation of the 680,000 square feet, this is the percentage that's government, this is the percentage that's schools, the amount of square footage, and this is for town-supported facilities.
Yeah, that number's gonna adjust in a
Vacant
little,
space.
in a next year, a little bit with schools.
Yeah, and I think we should then say, next year it's gonna go this.
It'll be
and
less.
And we'll show the amount of vacant space, which is academy,
Exactly.
will grow from, it'll grow by, it'll triple.
Yeah, yes, yeah, I mean, that's fair.
You know, and I think that would be a good way to do it, would be, you know, maybe just do a pie chart that shows how much of the space is now, and then what's it gonna be in a year from now? 26, 25, 26, you know, because we're gonna show the increase in vacant space. It's gonna be fairly substantial, and I think that's a very good point. So I think, you know, I'd throw that out, if that's an edit we think we probably should have. She's trying to put in, like, for example, you know, as you read through the rest of that, she adds things like, you know, the Arts Barn, Charlotte Everett's, you know, land trust spaces, those things. So, I mean, it's pretty hard to break out those spaces because they're so incorporated in other types of, like Memorial Town Hall has several different square footages and all kind of under one giant building. So it's a little bit hard to break that out specifically, but nonetheless, I think I think I understand the point. The next, number 5, some of these parcels are deed restricted open space. We were able to identify between 250 and 300 acres, and that's acceptable to me. I think that issue of adjacency is important for us. And I think that's something that we've talked to over and over again. So I think that's, you know, I think that's an important paragraph. And I'm almost thinking we should probably just bold that, just like we bolded the.
Yeah. Agree.
Under 7, or largest things, bus garage, talks about the flood zone, but I should probably try to break out. I wouldn't say sites in commercial area of town, far removed from school buildings and in a flood zone. I mean, it's partially in a flood zone. It's not fully in a flood. You know, so I think that's the only modification I put in there. DPW site, she added, you know, because these were helpful edits that Nick and Charmaine brought to this about after their visit there, that of how this is. Site work and building improvements to accommodate current and future operational needs. However, another more cost-effective and operationally attractive location would need to be identified for DPW before exploring development. I think that's okay. I think that's a reasonable way of doing it. But, you know, when you look at, I mean, my biggest concern with the DPW expectation is that not only is there a fair amount of investment in that site, but they're talking about $13 to $15 million to expand facilities. I turn to you as an expert in Butler buildings. I think for, you know, probably half that, you could build a Butler buildings that would accommodate an awful lot of their space and would be totally satisfactory for a DPW function, you know, in the town. And so it's an interesting question of, as we think about that, is whether that's
Well, that's a good
reasonable
exercise
What do I really want to put there?
to really look at.
Yeah,
What is the true cost of staying where they're at and doing the things that they do? Or picking them up, which would also entail downtime, their equipment, I mean, there's a lot of things that would go into picking them up and
Right. And I
Taking
think
them
we
to a different
mentioned
side.
that later on in the report, that you have to balance all these factors into a cost benefit.
sometimes we can be surprised when we run the numbers.
But it's also, you have to
But I
look
think
at
you
the
need to
numbers
run the
on,
numbers.
on the alternative. You release that space and it becomes developed and it becomes, because I think that one of the things that is extremely important is basically you have to take a look at what is the present value of basically 50 years of tax revenues.
The income stream.
Yeah. And versus the cost of this over, so you start looking at present values of the sale and tax revenues over time. And it may be more than the cost of doing it. And all of a sudden, so there may be an economic reason to think about that. So that's the analysis that has to happen down the road, but I think that's where we're going. We all agree. She, I think added nicely about the releasing the space at the surf club. So combining the building and ground and DPW at one site would offer operational efficiencies and additional potential capital cost savings. This also would be a significant benefit to the release of space at the surf club. So I think that's a pretty good paragraph. That's not bad.
Yeah, I would agree there's operational efficiencies. It could be realized, but it seems like a tight site once if you were to combine that site with beach and grounds.
But you do have, north of Nathan's Land, of that, if you look at that site, the footpath, on the other part that's along the railroad track, you got 3 or 4 acres of land. It's not developed at all.
This is the upper
Yes.
elevation of
Yeah.
DPW property.
So, interesting question of if you actually expand the DPW on that property with the stuff, or do you move it? Or is it the whole thing of developable space? That's kind of the trade-off.
I think there's also the question of
2 elevations, yeah.
two elevations, and do those two, while there may be operational efficiencies, there may not be combined site. Essentially 2 different operations.
Understood, but at the same token, you really got to look at what is the benefit of releasing the space at the surface. There's a large community value to it. So I think that's, that's just like square in the center of the whole.
And the surf club
Yeah,
is
so it's-
taking up very expensive real estate.
Yeah.
Well, it's a balancing act for a whole lot of different factors.
Yeah.
Deciding where they fit and what's going to end up making.
And that's the strategic plan down the road that we have to do. That this comes in, I mean that this is laying the foundation that when we present this to the Board of Selectmen, hopefully in March, it'll come out and say, yeah, you're going in the right direction. Now do the strategic, now do the heavy lifting on these focused areas.
Right.
That's really I think the goal of this report is to give us the priorities that say this is where we can really isolate our attention.
You were out of the room, but that was basically something I was saying. Everybody else is. We're looking at a bunch of things that are going to need a little bit of help from outside sources and investigations of varying types, and we're going to have to actually do nuts and bolts of getting that done. So part of the next phase of tasks.
Continuing on. Was a comment Peggy made on these. You raised the comment of what is traditional residential? Is it 1 or 2 acre single family homes? I think you're more specific there. Is it cluster housing, condos? I think it's all of the above. It's everything but affordable housing basically.
It's a master plan for whatever you you need input on that. It could, as you say, it could be a combination of all of it.
Yeah.
So the question is, do we keep it as just traditional, or do we actually try to modify that?
You know, I would
Traditional
take, I would
residential.
just take the word traditional out of it.
Or just say
Just
residential housing?
residential and just
Good point.
leave it open.
Maybe we'll further define it
Yeah.
down the road for now.
Okay, that's actually. Improvement price of fraction, I like it. The next comment she made was, affordable housing. Deed restricted affordable or affordable, and that these are smaller homes or condos. Fine, I agree, but you know, I think it's important for us to have a statement about affordable housing, because, you know, I like the idea of calling it first-time owner housing
I think that is a much better term.
rather than
Sure.
affordable, but, you know, because it's, maybe we just leave it that way, don't call it affordable. Just call it first-time owner housing,
I think that's a better way to go. So
I
you're not
agree.
putting yourself in a box.
okay? Think you're comfortable with that?
Is affordable housing,
It has a stigma.
It definitely does.
yeah, so that, it's the stigma we're trying to avoid more so than the sort of understood definition that affordable housing means some sort of sanctioned housing.
Well, there's two factors on affordable housing, or three factors. One is that there's a formula that basically says if you take 75% of the mean income of the town, of the mean family income of the town, right? So mean family, 75% of the mean family income of the town is probably about $110,000, $120,000. So how much can that, you know, so if you're saying 25% of that, so you're basically saying $35,000 of mortgage payments a year. What does that buy? That kind of defines the cost of the house.
But
Number
what
one.
about renting? Say first-time buyers, you're sort of excluding the rental market. Is there no rental market that's going to be a consideration for this?
Well, that
Like
could be, I mean, that's why if we just say
Yeah.
residential, then you could
You
treat
could
that
do a
residential.
lot.
That could be a lot. So the other thing is that there's a regulation with the state that says if you designate certain things affordable, which means that when they get sold, they can, the housing doesn't move at market rates, it moves at a formula rate. So that therefore, you know, although you get in at a lower cost, you get an affordable rate, but as a result of designating that by the developer gets a break on taxes in terms of, and it gets a cost break in terms of doing it. Plus you get a lot of regulatory breaks to build. So there's a whole series of regulations. And then the third factor is that there is a guidance from the state that you need to move to a certain percentage or your housing stock has to be in the quote category of affordable over time. And we're well below that threshold at the moment. And so I know that the Affordable Housing Subcommittee is very anxious to find greater opportunities for development. So, and maybe we just call it lower cost / first time home housing.
Except for the rental part.
Is there any harm in just saying residential?
Yeah, residential, because then you could do the rent, because you're probably going to have to include some rental as well as purchase.
Well,
Policy
I
intent
guess,
is
I mean, I think from the reason I put residential versus affordable first time as two categories is more political than
Yeah.
strategic.
Right.
Planning standpoint. Because I mean, I think that if you're looking for getting support for our work, there's a big group of people that if you can find space that could be satisfactory for affordable housing, that's going to be very popular. It's also, you can find space for more traditional types of housing. That's also going to be more popular because it's going to be a much broader revenue base for the town. So I look at it as two different ways of, because, you know, when you look at the revenue perspective, you know, the traditional housing is probably exponentially greater than the first-time home buyer housing market is. But nonetheless, you know, it does talk about, are those, maybe those are condos, those are other kind of things, but I think if we kind of, somehow we have to.
We don't want to turn anybody off.
Right.
Exactly. So I guess, you know, maybe we saw first-time home owner housing, which may include affordable. When we put that in the text.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take it out of the title.
That softens it.
Yeah.
Is the mandate from the state actually inclusive of rental and?
Yes.
Is there a deadline for when municipalities have to meet that, or is this just a?
Yeah, and it's, we're already past that. It's one of those mandates that is without any teeth, or
Okay.
there's no enforcement on it, but it's
There's no recourse, there's no.
not like in, you know, unlike flood, and all those other kind of things that are out there, you know. Yeah, so it's, I mean, at some point in time, there may be, I mean, they've tried to argue that to connect school aid to how compliant you are with the affordable housing statute, that if you're not compliant, a portion of the aid you normally get for the towns that are more compliant. That was one of the incentives that they're trying to push through, but I'm not sure that actually happened.
Sorry, with that.
Yeah.
Largely.
Large, it is, all right, you know, how much more can you take away, you know? Yeah, exactly. So, all right, I think that's helpful. So, within that. Control, so we go down to page 5 now. The next big thing was in terms of near-term directional activities. I was pleased that her edits were quite deliberate about Academy here. And I think it actually makes sense. That the budget of 15.9 is actually inadequate, and that the referendum is going to be to approve seats funds. The only other thing I might want to say in there is that we're not sure that those the outside grant funds awarded are actually in place.
In today's environment?
Right now, they're not. Right now, they're being frozen. Those grant monies are currently frozen. So it's I go one way or the other on that one. I can leave it out and keep this in soft. Let that come out as a part of the referendum. But that May referendum obviously is going to do that. So you basically, you know, she adds here potential options with other town buildings that may satisfy some department of community programming needs if the Academy project is unable to proceed as originally envisioned. I think it's a good way to put it.
What is the referendum going to be addressing? The
Well,
approving of the 15.9?
No, the 15.9 has already been approved. The difference was that when the 15.9 was approved, at least by discussion, it says that the town was going to go forward and try to get outside grant money to help offset the cost of the project. now that the project is coming in substantially beyond it, the 7 million, it's about $7 million, right?
7 million, yeah.
They want to add that to the 15.9 in order to balance the budget. So it would be additional to the, so that basically you're saying, take the grant money and expand the project or expand the budget to meet the program needs. Because the program is beyond what the original $15.9 million is. But I'm not sure that even at 22.9 million, where there's enough there to do that.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask. I
Yeah.
mean,
But that's not our job.
okay, I won't say anything.
So, I mean, and that's gonna be the commentary. I mean, I think when
I
we
just think they
present,
should go in with good numbers.
right?
Oh, totally.
I mean, that'll be part of the comment that'll come out of when we go in front of the board of selectmen, they're gonna ask that question.
And you're gonna answer it.
Yes. Hey, I mean, sometimes you gotta rip the Band-Aid off and you have to answer it properly and give an honest answer to a straightforward question, a straightforward answer.
Yeah.
I mean,
Saying that
so I'm comfortable with that paragraph right now. I actually think probably we leave off the uncertainty of the grant money at this stage. It's really not our position. The adaptive reuse, she just took out a sentence there, several properties in that you identified several preliminary ideas, adaptive reuse. I mean, we put the ideas in below, so I don't have a big problem with that. She put under the next page, page 7.6, the Memorial Town Hall could be intended for the Academy Community Center project or other things, so this is helpful. She added under Jeffrey with the expectation of fall 2025. And she said the gymnasium may be used for additional recreation activities, converted to performance space. So I think that's fine. It is an interesting question whether office space, that could be. I'd like to, for us to take, I don't know, you guys have you walked through Jeffrey? How much of that building can be saved? Because some of it's portable, so we probably should just get costs, right?
Yeah, the portables actually, the wing is in pretty good shape. I don't know what the life of those portables is currently, but.
They're beyond life, but I mean,
They're
Sounds like they're
portable.
in better shape
that's the
than
best part of the
TCLs.
building.
Yeah. And you have a roof issue as well.
The roof issue.
So maybe that's, I mean, if you're thinking about a daycare center or a leased daycare facility, maybe the little portables may be the option for that. Rather than the learning center.
Possible. I think the school itself, portables aside, is a difficult building to repurpose.
Well, using the classrooms for offices.
These classrooms for offices, you keep the footprint of the layout of that building the
Right.
same. Sure, you could use it.
I mean, because if
You
you
could
put,
fit it, but you try to change the layout, I think.
yeah, no, I think, I agree. Yeah, I'm just saying, how can you,
I mean, it's
Yeah.
a straight corridor, open space.
Yeah.
I mean, all you need to do is to go in and maybe
Drop a few
revamp the
walls
lighting
or
a little
something like
bit. And
You gotta put an HVAC.
it would have to probably be open workspace, definitely.
but I mean, if you're looking at, for example, I mean, if you move the Board of Ed out of here or a major function out of the town campus, the amount of space that would open up here in the town campus would be substantial. And would solve a lot of other problems that we're having here, at the town campus.
What are the space constraints?
Yeah.
Well, they're moving a lot of this out to other places. I mean, the whole point was that you've got a number of offices that are at the surf club now, right? They were all planned to go to a
I think
cabin,
it was Beach and Rec at
beach
Surf
and
Club.
rec, and
But then there's always gonna be an office at Beach and Rec, or at the Surf Club. They've gotta monitor that.
I don't understand the thought that without if the academy doesn't go forward, what do you do with the lack of space, or there's not enough offices, et cetera?
Academy's been dead for 20 years.
I know,
So
but
if it
they're
was that
talking
important,
about 10 or 15,000 square feet of the program academies for town offices.
Right.
That's really, yeah, the youth and family services.
And youth and
But,
family
but that's a
services.
15,000 square foot need to happen overnight.
No,
So if it was that important, why wasn't it 10 years ago? It seems.
I agree. Yeah. But I mean, I'm just saying, if there,
Maybe a nice to
if someone's
have, but
identifying
I
a,
struggle
you
to
know,
understand how it's a need if sort of. Yeah, the Academy's been dead for 20 years, so we've been short of office space for that long. Do you really need more?
Well, and the other side of it, is
that's
anybody,
a good point.
and also look at the existing town campus space. How efficient has it been like that? Can it be
It's been
Stop.
reconfigured a number of times over the years. I mean, there are some limitations, I know. I mean, there are limitations on record storage and there are limitations on things of that nature. They've been moving things around. But I mean, I think we need to have some greater detail.
also to understand that I live for myself, I don't really quite know what was intended to go to academy. I get bits and pieces, part of town campus offices, youth and family services, but I really don't have a sense of what was intended to go to.
There is a program statement in the Academy Committee's website that talks through what they wanted to put in there, what all the functions are. But let's get back to this. Okay, so, and then basically Ryerson was her next thing, again, expected vacancy. She added, while the Board of Education recommended the building be demolished as part of the Madison renewal plan, the committee, this board would like to investigate further whether it's part could be saved, readapted. I agree that.
That building's done. I can tell you that right now.
Right, no, I understand, but I mean, it just seems to, my question is, what can be done with that site?
The site would be fine, yeah.
Yeah, any exploration of reuse of the
And,
building.
and how much of that site, if you're developing those other adjacent properties out there, you may want to use that as access, as the access point for
Right.
those properties.
You could actually share the access road, cut right through Ryerson, you're right in there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you have half that road as a town road, we don't have to maintain it anymore.
So, and, you know, the only other option is if, you know, if we're talking about the bus garage or DPW, can it be housed in that, on that site? So that's part of the question. And then on the Learning Center, you know, I mean, Seth wants to remove that, her, and potentially a private pre-K programming space. I know that's premature, but I think it's probably also should be added, what she added in the Board of Ed recommended to be demolished. I mean, that sounds like that. What the board recommended.
Those are the oldest temporary buildings we have, and they are really in
They're
rough shape.
really rough shape. Yeah, those are recommended to be demolished. So I think we have to add. Road is fine. Next steps. Really, it's more just editorial comments. She added Beach and Rec Commission, Capital Improvement Committee, you know, to the, in number 3 on page
7.
7, I wanted to put as many different organizations that we should consult with, so it doesn't look like we're just going to talk to the Academy or P and Z as the only options. Because I think it broadens the scope of what we do and puts it there. And then then final number 4, so I don't have a problem with what she added there. But number 4, she said, potentially retain an outside consultant to complete a town-wide facility master plan based on groundwork laid by the committee. I guess it's innocuous enough to leave. I'm not sure. You know, this committee has a tremendous amount of expertise around this table, honestly. And I'm not sure that an outside firm is going to be that much better. I think I would prefer to do it rather than hiring a consultant to do a townwide master plan. I think we're talking about hiring consultants to facilitate the townwide master plan.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's, you know, we may hire different, you know, wetlands people to tell us something about this. And, you know, I think we can define the 4 or 5 pieces we need and put the puzzle together rather than hiring somebody to do that for us.
Yeah, I'd say that's right.
But your knowledge of all the people that would be involved, isn't that they just have a comfort zone in going out, getting outside consultants, putting the information together, or do you feel that we could successfully? I would love to do it. I mean, I think we can do it,
I do too.
but would you accept it from us?
I think I think the charge of our thing is if this is going to be a living plan, a living committee, and a permanent committee, as it's been promised to me that it will be, then we need to kind of, you know, we need to take ownership of this whole thing and say,
Yeah.
this is what it's going to be. And then whatever we hand off, you're going to hand off to people with certain types of consultants that will that will continue. I think, you know, I think if you hire just I mean, I get really concerned about committing to one individual firm. And you know, I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus, but when you look at Academy and they committed to Colliers and now they're saying Colliers didn't do their job, and, you know, it's gone back and forth. I think if you had several people that are part of this whole thing, they probably would have been better off. But I'm just saying it's one of those things that's more of a.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we know we need consultants for various things, but we're the body.
Let's save it for the good stuff.
Yeah,
You know?
right. I mean, we're the body that's supposed to be putting this together, so I agree with you.
And I think it's, you know, we just need to have this, we need to push to get it done within the next 12 to 18 months. It's really what I think it's our, what we need to do, and then we kind of hand it off to the successors. Good luck. Okay. The only other thing that I would add on here, if you go down through, at some point in time, Peter, I should go over that table on page 8 of the capital costs that I, from the DRA, CIP, and school capital plans, and I kind of incorporated, added all those numbers, put those numbers together.
Yep.
But I basically just assembled from those spreadsheets you provided.
We've modified an awful lot of that as part of the capital improvement plan, because some of these,
Yeah, but you just gave me that last month.
was that,
You just gave me that last month.
okay, yeah, you got that, yeah.
That's what I use.
Yes, okay, yep.
And
They had some recommendations in the DRA, like, replace the electrical system at the,
yeah, but there were no
Like,
numbers on it from
there
the
was-
school side.
well, it was actually in the SIP. At one point, we pulled it out
Oh,
because it was, replace the entire electrical system on a building that was just built in 2011.
For what
Some of those
purpose?
recommendations were silly.
yeah,
For
and
what
then,
purpose?
They have like these timestamps and they just went through the book and said, oh yeah, at this point, replace it all. And, there was no rhyme or reason as to why you needed to replace the electrical system in a building that was just built in 2011.
we used to run into it all the time when they managed campuses.
So,
Come in and say,
you know-
engineers come and say you have to replace the boiler. because the boiler was 25 years old or
Right.
30 years old. And I said, but that's the third boiler and it's only used 3 hours, it's only used for 3 months of the year. So in reality, it's only 7 years old. It's not really 30 years old.
And probably well maintained.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Let's
so
hear it for
it-
preventative
it's crazy.
maintenance.
Well, Nick and Charmaine, they saw one of the original boilers at Jeffrey's.
Yeah,
We still got one of those running.
that was
Yeah.
quite impressive.
So, and then the low is the paradigm I suggested where you take the operating costs and you take the average of the 2 or 3 years of operating costs that we had. So you normalize it and multiply it by 5 and then add it to the capital. Give me a
I
number.
have a
Charmaine,
question.
Charmaine and I have a question.
Sure.
When I'm going through these operating costs, let's take town campus for example. We have a $15.25
Per square foot.
per square foot, and then you look at 2023. But then when I go to the 5-year average, it's up to $61.67.
Yeah, so what I did was I took the 15 plus the 10 plus the 11. So the average of that, 2536 divided by 3 is 13 times 5. 13 times 5 because it doesn't.
So it's a,
Okay, let's go through this again.
so over.
What I'm trying to do is I'm
over a
saying
five-year
over the next
period.
5 years, this is
Okay.
what you're going to spend on the building.
Gotcha.
All right,
All right, this is the present value of what you're going to spend on the building over the next 5 years.
not per year per square foot.
No,
Okay.
because basically, I got a 10-year capital horizon and a 5-year operating, or maybe we should put a 10-year operating horizon. It's low.
Essentially-
Yeah,
It's essentially the sum of
the sum,
the previous 5 years.
Yeah.
which
So
is the
maybe
sum
we
for
should,
the next.
maybe we
5
should
years.
do it for, maybe we should make the capital and the operating the same, both 10 years. It doesn't change the numbers.
Yeah, no,
No.
In
yeah.
order of magnitude, it's just the arithmetic of how.
I just needed to know how you got to that.
Yeah,
number,
I was
because
trying
I
to,
wasn't coming up with.
Yeah.
Now I know.
so actually, that's a good point. I think 10-year, bring them both on. If you get, this is the next 10 years of operating, this is a 10-year operating cost for the building and the 10-year capital cost for the building. You add those two together and it gives you the total
Or just
cost.
get
per
rid of
square
the
foot.
average. It's
Right.
not average, it's
Yeah.
just, it's cumulative for the
Yes.
next 5 years,
Yeah, I agree.
based on the previous. Yeah. Okay. I feel better.
Okay, that works, better. okay.
Thank you.
And then that kind of, on the graphic on the next page, on page 8, that kind of gives me the dollars per square foot across the bottom. And then your strategic things are on the top. If you look at the next page on page 8 or 9, I guess,
10.
page 10, sorry. Yeah, that's that chart that's up there. Basically, whatever your strategic score, however you guys want to come up with a
We gotta talk about
strategic
that
score,
too.
whatever, methodology you want to come up with, it's fine, as long as you kind of have a relative scale to the various
From one
things.
to the other, yeah.
But some of
Where do
the
they fall?
information, we don't have those, like the cap, like the tax benefit. We could just generally say, yeah, there will be tax benefits. We can't quantify them, but
At this stage, you
It's
can't,
there.
but I mean, but will it change the relative?
because you got really intelligent on one of your criterias. I was quite impressed with it, but I didn't know what to do with
But
it.
you could actually throw some of them out and simplify.
Can't we do that? Do we have that?
Absolutely.
Oh, because I've been
Yeah,
making
I mean,
notes.
if you don't think that's gonna work,
Oh, thank you.
simplify it. And just-
Thank you.
I'm just trying to get a relative scale so that we can triage out and say, all right, these are the buildings that would make sense to look at.
Because I actually started
Between a
making,
capital cost and a
making
strategic.
notes, and I'm like, because like you had one that was 30-year present value of grand list tax revenue and sales price, and I'm like,
Right.
Oh, if you ended up,
Whoa.
no, if you ended, my point was that the vacant land, for
Yes.
example,
Special, yeah.
that's how you'd want to, if you were comparing moving a function, right? The cost of moving a function and the cost of building it in a new space. How much of that, what's that current present value versus what's the present value of the tax revenue that the released property will generate over time. So that you can actually then you can make an economic judgment. Yeah, so I'm just, so basically, if we can just fix that, so then, because I think then we'll have this draft and redrafted, and if we can get this over the course of the next couple of weeks,
And what we'll do
the
is,
strategy thing, then I can make this not an example, but a firm piece that can say, as a background of how, how we made the cookies.
so what we'll do is then we'll take a look at the criteria that you originally gave us for, and
And
then,
if some work and if
we'll
others
tweak
don't,
it,
now that you've gone
and
through the.
once we
buildings.
tweak it, I'll send it to you to take a look at, just to
Yeah,
make sure you feel comfortable with it. Okay.
I feel comfortable with what you guys are recommending. I'm not gonna micromanage that. You guys have actually walked the buildings with fresh eyes and thought through it. And I think as you come and just kind of put these things out from a strategic standpoint.
Okay. But the third one
Where
we
do you
can't
think they
do
fall?
yet, so we're not ready for the third one, I think.
What's the third one?
The third section, which is
No, I think we just said we're gonna just do two.
logistical issues, secondary
No,
review.
we're just gonna do the first two issues. Only. And you can take anything out that you want.
You've made my day.
If you want to just make it 2 or 3 things, that's even better.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? So I think we have a modification on this thing. I will take responsibility for redrafting. And we'll go from there.
Want some help on that?
Yeah, well, I will. Let me just, because I got notes on all these things, I can
Right.
incorporate them. I got all the files. I'll redraft it and I'll send it to everybody for another round of commentary. Okay?
But also, kudos to you for what you put together. It's
Absolutely.
a beautiful
Absolutely.
document.
Well,
Really
yeah,
was.
Very well, yeah.
All right, so the suggestion, Peggy, would be to put it on the Board of Selectmen. Let's see, what did she say? Something here. Sorry. She has a specific recommendation for so she said I can put the committee on the Board of Selectmen March 24th or April 8th meeting agenda. What is our next meeting?
Hey Raquel, when's our next meeting?
I believe it's March 20th.
Okay,
Oh, good. So I think we'd be ready for the 24th. So if March 20th is our next meeting, we can revise this, keep one more time on it, March 20th, and then we should be able to go to the March 24th.
And really,
Selectmen.
yeah, it would be good to really know what to expect going into that meeting and how we should prepare ourselves.
I mean, we'll get that from her.
And then we can talk about it before,
Yeah.
not be,
And she may even suggest that we do some individual briefing over the course of the next month with some of the other selectmen. One-on-ones.
okay.
Okay. Well, no, I think
I think it makes it easier.
it makes it a lot easier once, I don't want to be giving them stuff
Bombarded.
and
Yeah.
having them be surprised,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and reacting without
Dropping
having
stuff
thought
on.
about it.
Was there 5 of them?
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
Be interesting to meet all of them. You know, maybe.
Okay, so let's shoot for March
What is?
24th. So for the Board of Selectmen. And then that keeps this thing moving on pace. I mean, I think the April 8th
I'll be away.
is also doable. It's only a week later. It's only 2 weeks later.
You said you went,
I'm leaving town on the 8th and actually gone most of the month of April, but
So March 24th would be good.
24th I'll be there. Yeah.
Okay, then let's do it the 24th, because I think it's going to be important for us all to be at the Board of Selectmen meeting and be part of this presentation and part of the discussion.
Agreed.
Because, you know, we represent a lot. I was sharing with Charmaine, I think this group here represents a really interesting cross-section of perspectives on the town. From someone who went to academy school, to someone who had kids in the current school systems, to someone who's new to the town, to someone who's done too many things and broken too many eggs already in town.
wow.
So, okay, do we have any public comments?
Nobody's on.
No. Okay, well, with that, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Good job.